much for tuning in. This is Smart 24 TV and we drive your business. Now this is another edition of Financial Markets and Anthony, your host. Of course, this is a very unique program where we look into the different investment segments of the financial markets, particularly looking at the stock market trends here in Africa. As of course, we look into details of the different counters that are listed on the stock exchanges here in Africa. And of course, why is this very important for you? Of course, as an individual, you must be able to know before investing which companies are doing what, which companies have actually performed better than others. And of course, as rationale for investing in any particular company, you must have evidence that you will have a return on investment, especially in the long run. Of course, the show is proudly brought to you by Alltex East Africa. Now, Alltex under Zabu are bringing you a very unique product, which is the treasury bonds in the USSD code *292#. Now, for the very first time in East Africa, you can be able to buy treasury bonds or even sell some of those instruments via your smartphone. Now, you can dial *292# using your smartphone or any other phone without need to access the internet. You can now transact money off of your mobile money onto the exchange and be able to buy those securities. You can also sell if you're already holding an instrument on these platforms. You can be able to still find traders. They do have varying interest rates depending on the nature of the instrument. Of course, that is the maturity period. Looking at 2-year terms, maybe 3-year, 5-year bonds, and so on. You will find all the best rates there at Alltex East Africa. Remember, Alltex is regulated, and that is by the Capital Markets Authority of Uganda, who is the regulator of the capital markets here in Uganda. Now, let's, without wasting any time, get into the stock market's performance for yesterday, which was the second day of trading. Well, generally speaking, in Africa, we did have a quite bear market. And when you look into, for example, Johannesburg Stock Exchange, Ghana Stock Exchange, Nairobi, Uganda, including many other stock exchanges, except Zimbabwe, which was also just lagging in performance. Nothing changed in their index. But major indexes around Africa did not turn out well for, of course, the second day of trading here on the stock exchanges. Particularly, for example, Ghana also stalled at 0.0% gain, meaning the index didn't have any movement. And this is based on their benchmark index, the Ghana Stock Exchange Consumer Index. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange J203, which tracks the average performance of all the listed companies at Johannesburg Stock Exchange, also tumbled, losing about 204.5 points in the second day's trades. Nairobi Securities Exchange lost about 0.11 points on their all-share index as well. And Nigerian Stock Exchange as well lost about 113.48 points on the second day of trading. What a day there for the different stock exchanges here in Africa. But of course, we take keen interest in our very own here in Uganda. And let's get to dive into that performance there for the different companies on the Uganda Stock Exchange rather. Now, looking at the all-share index, the index shed off about 2.64 points in the second day trades, closing at 1,216.99 points. Now, looking at the reasons behind this fall, number one, we didn't have any gainers on the second day of trading, be it cross listings, be it domestically listed companies. There was no single gainer that was actually registered on the second day of trading. However, we had participation from 4 mainly domestic companies In fact, only domestic companies participating as usual. And the day ended with a disappointing number of losers. Six of them actually lost on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Mainly, of course, this was an effect that was rubbing off from the Nairobi Stock Exchange. And all these losers were from Nairobi Stock Exchange. Now, Nation Media Group lost the most value on the day with a 1.58% share price depreciation, followed by Jubilee Holdings at exactly 1.53% share price depreciation, and Centum Investments at 1.03%, whereas Equity Bank shared off about 0.69% of their trading price there. There were no gainers, like I mentioned, in the day, and all the losers were cross-listed from cross-listings from Nairobi Stock Exchange. Looking at the top movers, on the other hand, we had 4 companies who participated in the trading, and Umeme Limited led the gainers after having recorded the biggest volume by far from other trading participants. They had about 556,262 shares that were recorded in these second day's trades. It was followed closely by Stanbic Bank Uganda at 95,239 shares volume, whereas Uganda Clays had 11,111 shares, and MTN Uganda traded about 3,200 shares. Umeme continues to put a very good performance up, of course, despite whatever is happening, especially in the stock markets here in Uganda. Umeme has tried its level best to actually maintain the value for shareholders, maintain its participation. The level of participation is still quite high in Umeme, and also the turnover. They do have provided a good turnover as well on the market. Of course, being able to maintain their price of currently 210 Ugandan shillings per share. But Umeme currently still has, a little bit of value here to actually make up for. Looking at their year-to-date performance, they do still have outperformed many of their colleagues. And looking at their 4 weeks performance, they are on a 5% gain. In the 3 months, they are on a 5% gain as well. That's from 200 to 210 Ugandan shillings. In 1 year, they are on a gain of 5.8778%. That is in exactly year-on-year performance. They have been recorded as not only the biggest trader for this year, at least based on reports from the first quarter, second quarter earnings from the Capital Markets Authority bulletin. They have been recorded as having the biggest turnover of trading there on the Uganda Stock Exchange. Currently, Umeme, after having gained from 189 to 210 shillings, has gained about 11.1% value on their share price, looking at exactly a couple of months ago, from the 1st of January to the current date. And that's not all. They are the second most traded on in the last 3 months. So you are assured of liquidity with a company such as this one. To be very specific, since the 1st of November to the 29th of November, since the 1st of September to the 29th of November, Umeme has recorded a total volume of 21.1 million shares and a gross turnover of 4.13 billion Ugandan shillings over the period, with an average of just about 334,000 shares that were recorded on average in every trading session in the last 3 months. And Umeme continues to be a leading company in the distribution and supply of electricity here in Uganda. mandated by the government of Uganda, but also the market participation that they have especially witnessed in the last few weeks has really made Umeme a company of choice on the Uganda Stock Exchange. Things haven't been so well for especially many other companies because of the current economic, kind of difficult times, and people hardly getting to access their savings, and those who have been able to get their savings, they are unable to actually make a return on them because they're trying to reserve those savings so they don't have to look for money probably in the festive season. So that's the nature of investors you're looking at. But still, Umeme has maintained such a good performance, and we hope for even much better performance in the future. Yesterday they had a total turnover of 117 million Ugandan shillings, which was one of the biggest turnover for the day. And the total turnover for Uganda Stock Exchange yesterday being 119 million, they had almost 98% of that. Now, away from Umeme stock, Stanbic Bank Uganda also maintained its performance in terms of trading participation after the bank had actually about 95,239 shares that were traded, ending with a 2 million Ugandan shillings gross turnover there on the Uganda stock market. When you look at the shares outstanding for Stanbic Bank, they currently have about 51.2 billion shares outstanding, valued at 1.07 trillion Ugandan shillings, and that is Stanbic Bank for you. They do have a gain on their 6 months, a loss of about 8.7% and 19.2% in 1 year, and the year-to-date annual loss of about 19.2%. Now, this is because, of course, they began the year with 26.0 Ugandan shillings, and currently at 21, it puts them at a disadvantage in terms of year-to-date performance. But still, notably, they have maintained their position as the most traded on stock on the exchange for the past 3 months, in the month of September 1st to the 29th of November 2022, having traded a total volume of 61.9 million traded shares, valued at 1.3 billion Ugandan shillings there on the market. Now, on average, they do have about 982,589 shares that are traded per session, and a volume high of 53 million shares that was achieved on the 20th of October. So that's their most recent biggest volume. Well, comparing with their competitors, they do have other financial institutions that are closely competing, and on top of these is Bank of Baroda Uganda, who yesterday had a big one. He was a big mover there on the market, but this time round on the second day didn't actually show up on the participants list. But Bank of Baroda closely continues to compete with Stanbic Bank Uganda. However, in terms of market capitalization, he's still way behind at about 213 billion Ugandan shillings worth of market capitalization on the Uganda Stock Exchange. Also, the stock is pretty much more expensive than that of Stanbic Bank at 85.0 Ugandan shillings. Comparing that with 21 shillings, of course, this is a deal breaker for Stanbic Bank Uganda in this case when it comes to affordability. In terms of year-to-date performance, the company is doing much better than Stanbic Bank. The company began the year with 95.0 Ugandan shillings, and currently at 85, they have just lost about 11% in terms of year-to-date. Equity Bank Limited has the biggest market capitalization, and that is a total of about 5.16 trillion Ugandan shillings, and currently it is announcing a 12.7% year-to-date loss, and their share price is currently 1,300 94 shillings per share. Still pretty much more expensive than that of Stanbic. DFCU Bank has about 407 billion Ugandan shillings worth of market capitalization, and this current price is 544.00 Ugandan shillings, which was a 6.21 year-to-date loss, which they are still nursing at the Development Finance Company of Uganda. Still, Stanbic beats this company when it comes to the performance here. Jubilee Holdings, well, maybe close to financial institutions, still competing in the same line of financial services. Jubilee Holdings currently still has some issues after it has registered about 39.3% loss on their year-to-date. This is not all. They have their price dwindling from over 10,000 shillings from the beginning of the year to currently about 6,018.35 Ugandan shillings on the stock market. Centum, lastly, Centum Investments has about 45.7% loss on its year-to-date performance, and the price of exactly 241.35 Ugandan shillings, and about 161 billion, and it's still one of the companies losing when it comes to year-to-date, but also in the most recent few days. Now, regarding the performance of MTN Uganda Craze was another big mover here. I think we can't skip Uganda Craze because he's currently still also putting up some good fight on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Currently, their stock price is still stuck at 15.0 Ugandan shillings. That is Uganda Craze Limited stock, and they do have a market capitalization of 13.5 billion Ugandan shillings, representing about 0.064% of the market capitalization of the entire Uganda Stock Exchange. And this makes Uganda Craze the 15th most valuable company that is listed on the Uganda Stock Exchange. Out of this 11,111 shares that the company was able to trade, they had a turnover of close to 166,665 Ugandan shillings, and currently their shares outstanding are at 900 million shares, valued at exactly 13.5 billion Ugandan shillings. Uganda Craze, it has a very rich history with the Uganda Stock Exchange. First of all, very fast company to list on the equities market, and that goes way back in the 2000s when the company got listed fast, and it has of course experienced so many ups and downs on the exchange, but is still here to this day. So that's a very rich history concerning Uganda Craze and the Uganda Stock Exchange. Now, looking at their 15.0 share price, the price has been maintained mainly throughout the last 1 month or so, and in just 3 months they have lost value of 16.2%. So in the short term their price is stable, but it witnessed a decline, a very sharp decline about 3 months ago. And in year-to-date performance they have lost about 15.4 Uganda. They have rather gained about 15.4% on their year-to-date gain, from 13.0 shillings to 15.0 Ugandan shillings. Uganda Craze yesterday was able to still maintain its spot as the 5th most traded on stock on the Uganda Stock Exchange in the last 3 months. In this period, dating back from September 1st to 29th of November, the company has traded about a volume of 3.99 million shares, valued at exactly 59.9 billion actually, on average, they have about 59.9 million Ugandan shillings turnover in the last 3 months, and about 63,000 shares that are traded per trading session. That is basically Uganda Clays. They do have scanty trades here and there. You're seeing the 11,000 volume coming here in the first place, and then that is on the 29th. Then last week they did have on the 25th about 74,000 shares that were traded. On the 23rd they did have about 67,000. So most recently there has been a little bit improvement in participation, but more is yet to be done and more is demanded of the Uganda Clays stock. Now let's look at the summary here. Uganda Clays, of course, putting aside Uganda Clays, MTN Uganda was another participant at about 3,200 shares. We already mentioned that the all share index did not fare so well at the end of the day after it lost about 2.64 points to close at 1,216 points in the last trades of the day. However, the local company index maintained its value because despite the participation of the local companies in the trade, there was no change in their price. So all of them maintained their price. Usually when you see this kind of movement, of course, people are trading. They're trying to come up with some sources of money, probably to fund the holiday season, or people are actually trying to sell off some of their stock and get into new stocks, at least as the new year begins, because of certain sentiments they have about particular stocks. Looking at the local company index, in 1 week it has lost 0.26%, and in 4 weeks a loss of 0.92% has been registered. Now at the end of the day's session at the Uganda Securities Exchange, a total of just 665,000 shares above that was actually traded at exactly 119 million Ugandan shillings, with Wumeme taking away the biggest share of about 117 millions of this 119. Compared with the previous day of trading, the data showed a 10% decline in the volume and a 10% decline in the turnover as well. The market capitalization of Uganda Securities Exchange also went down slightly from 21.05 trillion to about 21.00 trillion Ugandan shillings. And that's all that we had for you there from the Uganda Stock Exchange. Remember, to trade with the exchange, you must be trading with a licensed stockbroker, and you can access any of these stockbrokers online and get to consult, get to open yourself an SCD account, and there are just 5 of them, so no need for error, no need for confusion. We do have SBG, crypto, rather cheaper technologies, as well as we do have the Crested Capital and the likes of Dyer and Blair. So you can approach any of those online or physically, and they will help you buy stock at the Uganda Stock Exchange. That's it for the Uganda Stock Exchange. We are going to go into our commercial break, and when we return, we look at the rest of Africa, and especially starting off with Nairobi. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Smart 24, driving business.
our sky. Futinbuto, the taste of Uganda in a new international park.
Smart 24, driving business.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our last segment of the show. My name is Anthony and I am your host. Now remember to catch up with us on Twitter, and my handle is at Anthony Sebale, or you can catch up with Smart24 TV at Smart24 TV and get to follow also the hashtag financial markets and get to see some of the latest on these different topics of discussion, especially on the stock market. What are your sentiments as an investor? Where are you investing in this market? Of course, it's a bear market, but when the streets are bloody, that's the best time to go out and walk on them. That's according to Warren Buffett, a very well-known investor, renowned investor in the world. So you must be willing to make the move despite the hard times. And before we get into Nairobi trading, I want to remind you that the show is brought to you by OTEX. And OTEX East Africa is a private stock exchange now licensed by the Capital Markets Authority. And the exchange helps you now under their ZABU initiative to be able to buy or sell treasury bonds. And for starters, treasury bonds are transferable debt either to government, or rather actually to government mainly, because corporate bonds do have the private sector coming in, but mainly this is transferable debt to government. And this is a way government raises money, and this is through domestic borrowing. Instead of us going for more commercial and expensive loans abroad, government opts to seek them funds from its locals, and this is through treasury bonds. Now, OTEX found a gap between people in the private sector as well as the government and the Bank of Uganda. And to be able to fill this gap, OTEX tried to bring technology into play and make the markets more accessible. Now with their ZABU initiative, you can simply dial *292# and you are straight away into the market. And that market is not only for Uganda, but also across East Africa, in Tanzania and Kenya as well. They're of course planning to expand into other countries, but mainly for now, Uganda, Kenya and Tanzania. And this is not only for those who want to buy, but for those who want to sell. And just to give you a brief on treasury bonds. Treasury bonds, like I said, is transferable debt, but it comes at a cost. Of course, government has to bear the burden of being able to take away the public's money for a specific period of time, and this is the interest. And this interest comes at an interest rate predetermined by the Bank of Uganda or the central bank of any particular state, in this case either Kenya or Tanzania or Uganda. Now when this rate, of course, just to give you a background before OTEX getting into this business of being able to access these markets, you could be able to go to Bank of Uganda for the auction. Just recently they had about 289 billion on their treasury bill auction, and they do invite bidders. And who is a bidder? A bidder is a person who is seeking to lend to government at a particular interest rate that he feels should be appreciated by the Bank of Uganda. And of course you submit in your request or your bid, and of course we do have competitive and non-competitive bids. For the non-competitive bids, really, it's those people with between 100,000 and 100,100,000. So anywhere in between there, you will not be a competitive bidder. You will be a non-competitive bidder. And that means that your position basically is to take whatever interest the bank comes up with. But then for competitive bidders, they do put in their interest rates. And these are people investing 100 million, 100,000 or more. And that's something you really need to understand. And of course, we have two market segments, the primary market segment and the secondary market segment, where in the primary market segment, you're interfacing directly with Bank of Uganda. So the instruments are being issued for the very first time. And this means that people are coming to buy the bonds for the very first time that they're being issued. And this is, of course, directly through the Bank of Uganda, through, however, primary dealers, which are banks. 8 of them now in Uganda: UBA, Bank of Baroda, you have ABSA, you have Standard Chartered, Centenary Bank, Stanbic Bank, and the like. This will help you to deal in dealership. Of course, that is through the central bank. Now, we do have another market, and this is where Altex really comes in handy, and this is the secondary market. So after the first primary market, the first people have bought out these shares and they possess the instruments. They can trade those instruments on the secondary market. Remember, especially treasury bonds are long-term financial instruments. In other words, you're lending government for more than 2 years. You're lending government for 5 years, for 10 years, for 15 years, 20 years. In Kenya, you can even go as much as 30 years now. So that's definitely a very long time. And what if you need the money before that time expires? This is why they brought into play the secondary market. And so Altex comes in to help you on this secondary market trading. The secondary market trading has different interest rates from the primary markets trading. And these interest rates are predetermined, especially on the yield curve. There's a yield curve for all the different bonds, the 10-year, the 4-year, and so on and so forth, which is of course determined by different factors, including the central bank rate, including the exchange rate, and so on and so forth. So this yield, of course, is the interest rate that the buyers are able to earn from their investments. So if it's a 10% interest rate and you're investing 100 million, and this 10% interest rate is per annum, it means you will get 10 million every year, and that will come in 2 shares. The first 6 months, you will get the first 5 million, and in the next 6 months, so long as you're holding the instrument, you will get the next 5 million. That's the 10% interest. So Altex is cutting out all that drama and helping you access these markets via your mobile phone, and being able to also purchase them with money off of your mobile money account. This is by simply dialing *292#. And when you do that, they will send you a code, and then you will be able to get verification and of course transfer the money from your mobile money account. Altex is regulated by the Capital Markets Authority, and you can check them out at their website at altex.com for more information. Away from that, getting to Nairobi Stock Exchange, it had, of course, a similar day here like the Uganda Stock Exchange, and things were not pretty well. In aggregate, we still had 46 Nairobi Securities Exchange listed companies participate in the trading. The day ended with 25 gainers and 16 losers on the exchange. Now, Kakuzi came back as a big gainer here for the day. Of course, Kakuzi is taking chance of whatever is happening in the market, and many other small cap companies here at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Kakuzi appreciated by 10% on the second day of trading, with a total share price of 418.0 Kenyan shillings, closing the day there on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Nairobi Business Ventures appreciated 8.61%. Umeme continue to put up a very wonderful fight there at the Nairobi Securities Exchange in the 3rd place amongst the top gainers at a 5.97% gain. Samia Africa also gained about, Samia Africa gained about 5.74% there on the exchange. Crown Paints Kenya was another person who participated, but unfortunately ended their day in a loss. Nairobi is really turning out well for small cap companies, especially most recently. You're even looking at the biggest movers here. Yesterday it was Kabaseed, and then you're seeing other companies as well coming in to add on to that. And so there is still a lot really to look forward to at the Nairobi Stock Exchange here for us. Now, looking at also the bottom losers, we did have Express Kenya lose about 6.67% on their second day of trading, as well as Ever Ready East Africa Investments at a 5.33% share price depreciation. You must really love figures when you're talking about financial markets, how really companies can gain 5% and the next day they have a 10% gain, and the next, it's really quite fascinating. Of course, it comes sometimes with a little bit of stress because some people are making losses somewhere, but still that's the way we learn, and that's the way we get to move on in the markets. Now, Nairobi Stock Exchange still had a fairly good or well-balanced performance, especially from the small caps. And looking at the biggest movers, we had Equity Group Holdings lead the top movers this time round, not Safaricom, at about 4.38 million traded shares in the second day of trading. Safaricom followed suit at a 2.8 million shares, and the KCB Group led at about 1.6 million shares as well. And East African Breweries Limited had about 1.17 million shares that were transacted on the second day of trading. Regarding the performance of the All-Share Index, which is a benchmark performance indicator at Nairobi Stock Exchange, it paired by about 0.11 points, closing at exactly 127.23 points, and representing a 1-week loss of 0.25% and a 4-week loss of 1.07% loss, and overall year-to-date loss of about 23.57% that was shed off. Other remarkable indexes like the NSE 20, the NSE 25 appreciated on the contrary, and the NSE 20 went up 0.1% and the NSE 25 went up 0.45%. These of course struck the top companies, the NSE 20 in particular, the top 20 companies, and the NSE 25, the top 25 companies. In Kenya, we do have an exchange-traded fund, and when you look at the way the exchange-traded fund really works, it's quite different from the way other investments, or for example, buying stocks really works. And for example, you can invest in different stocks at the same time without having to choose individual companies and choosing out which company you're going to invest in, which company are you dropping, and this makes quite a good deal for people who are risk averse, and it helps you to kind of diversify your portfolio, which is very key to successful investments, no matter if it's in financial markets or any other business. And so the exchange traded fund in Kenya is important, and we track really the exchange traded fund based on indexes, the NSE 20 and the NSE 25. Now, when you're looking at the top gainers, like we said, we had Kakuzi, and I want to just have a look at Kakuzi here and get to see how much they did move the market. Remember, the small caps really are high return but high risk. So don't be surprised if just 2 weeks from now, or even 1 day from now, tomorrow, or even in today's trades, Kakuzi turns out to be, coming at the bottom of the tables. It's very, very possible, and it is something you must expect if you're trading or dealing with small caps. They are quite risky, but also the return is quite high. if at all it actually does come to pass. So you must be taking note of that as well. Now, Kakuzi is engaged in the cultivation of tea. Tea growing in Kenya is a very lucrative business, and we have quite a number of companies on the Uganda Stock Exchange that are listed but still deal in coffee and tea. Now, this company deals in the growth, in the packaging, and the sale of avocados, livestock farming, growing, and the selling of pineapples, and forestry, as well as macadamia development. The company's products include tea, avocado, pineapple, macadamia orchards, livestock, and forestry. The tea estate is situated in the Nandi Hills, located about 330 kilometers northwest of Nairobi. Now, currently, the company holds about 819 billion Kenyan shillings worth of market capitalization, and this makes the company the 20th most valuable, which is a very good position. Of course, we have 65 companies, so a company coming in the 20th position in terms of value is not something we can take for granted. Yesterday, they did have a gain of 38 shillings. Now, 38 Kenyan shillings is about 900 shillings here in Uganda. Now, if you can quantify that, that is, let's first continue, and I'll show you a picture here of why this is important. Now, this was a 10% gain, and they were gaining to exactly 418.0 Ugandan shillings. Now, the volume they had was about, let's see, they did have a good volume here of about 100 shares, and a total of about 41,800 Kenyan shillings. That was their turnover. Now, to put this in perspective, if somebody, for example, you look at 38 shillings, and we're saying this is close to 900 Ugandan shillings. And so let's assume you sold these 100 shares and had bought the shares when the share price was below 418, to be specific, 38 shillings below. So it means that you're going to make 900 times 100. That is 90,000 in a single day of trading. Of course, you might not see this as significant, but it gets more significant with numbers. So it's something you must look into, and this is one way people make money. But of course, this is for people who have spent some time in the markets, and if you're not comfortable with this, if you're risk averse and want to retain your money, it's all right. But definitely you can also try out for yourself. Now, in its last day of trading, after gaining 10%, closing at 418, gaining from 380, the company still has, of course, some value attached to its name. Looking at their year-to-date performance, however, they have gained about 8.57% from 385 shillings to the current 418 shillings on their price, which is the 15th best on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. However, in terms of trading, they still have small volumes and currently ranked 56th in the last 3 months of trading via volumes. And they have traded about 13,300 shares and in 54 deals in the last 3 months, dating back in the 30th of August there. Now, that's exactly what we had for you from the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Remember, to be able to participate in this market really takes also a little bit of care and more research, and getting help from the different financial advisors and the stock brokers. We do have stock brokers who have subsidiaries in Kenya who can help you access that stock, but you can also go online and get to find out how the stock brokers also in Kenya get to the customers there. Now, let's cross over to the US very quickly, as our time is fast spent. Now, there has been exceptionalism in the performance of the technology stocks on the US stock market. Now, for nearly a decade, the mega cap technology leaders such as Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet have dominated the US stock market. But those days appear to be over, according to strategists at Goldman Sachs. Now, David Costin, the bank's chief U.S. equity strategist, told reporters in a call on Monday that technology is less likely to outperform by a stronger magnitude than other S&P 500 components in the coming years, adding that the revenue growth gap between companies in the sector and others is expected to be substantially small. Tech companies on the US market have been hit hard, with many of them laying off workers at a very high rate. This includes Amazon and now Twitter joining as well, the group after Elon Musk took over. Many people have been fired, and this is the way the employers are saying they're cutting costs, but it's coming at a very hefty cost, especially now on the stock exchange. But in summary here, regarding the performance of the different indexes, the S&P 500, there was still a decline in the second day of trading, especially on the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq, which is the tech-heavy index of the US stocks. That's it, ladies and gentlemen, that we had for you today. Remember to save and invest, and catch us tomorrow, same time, same place. Bye for now. My name is Anthony.
Smart 24, driving business. Smart 24, driving business.